Hello, OIS Podcast audience. Pleasure to be speaking with you again. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rob Rothman. I am a practicing ophthalmologist, glaucoma specialist by training, and I am also the co-founder and co-managing member of Infocus Capital Partners, which is an ophthalmic focused venture capital fund in the United States. I've hosted a bunch of podcasts for OIS over the past couple of years, but today we have a very unique group to be speaking with, all of whom are based in Israel. And it's probably the first like this solely geographic discussion we've had, but there's a purpose for that. As many of you might have heard in the past, we've had a spotlight on many companies from Israel due to the fact that the Israeli health tech culture is quite unique. And all of the guests today are people who have taken lead roles inside the health tech culture in Israel as it relates to ophthalmology, all doing different things and all incredibly important for the future of ophthalmic care. So with that as a background, we have with us today Daphne Haim-Langford, who is the founder and CEO of Tarsier Pharma, Dr. Anat Lowenstein, who is a world-renowned retina specialist and the head of the Department of Ophthalmology at Tel Aviv Medical Center, and finally, Yaakov Mishlin, who serves as the CEO of BioLight and is the co-chairman of IATI, which is an umbrella organization of high-tech and biomed companies in Israel. And the reason that all three of these people are joining us today is in preparation for a very exciting healthcare conference, which is coming up in Israel next month, called MIXiii Health-Tech Conference, which will be on November 9th and 10th in Jerusalem. And while that is a large healthcare conference in Israel, this is the first time that we will have a live OIS Israel session of a dedicated part of the healthcare conference. I have been privileged to be asked to co-chair the ophthalmology track along with Daphne and Anat. Yaakov is the overall conference chairman, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to have everybody together to discuss what's so unique about Israel and what's so unique about this conference in general. So thank you all for taking the time to be here today. I'm hoping that people who listen to this podcast will understand the unique opportunity that's going to occur next month in Jerusalem. I think it's best probably to start with Daphne, since you sort of are the epitome of what is going to be presented at the MIXiii conference. You are running a startup ophthalmic company. You and I have spoken many times over the years regarding Tarsier, and I think it's probably a great idea for you to tell people about the company and sort of let them know where you are as an example of the types of companies that'll be presenting next month.
Thank you, Rob. So it is hectic time at Tarsier, running a global phase 3 clinical trial while making progress with our pipeline and commercialization readiness. And I think that news is always good. So I'm pleased to update that 50% of patients have been enrolled to our phase 3 trial, which is an active controlled, randomized, multi-center trial with 30 participating clinical sites in the US and Europe. In this phase 3, we are testing the efficacy and safety of the novel TRSO1 eye drop formulation in patients with uveitis and uveitic glaucoma, which is a devastating blinding disease that affecting young people and children. While top-line results from this important trial are expected in the second quarter of next year, we have made a substantial progress with the TRSO2, which is our slow-release formulation for the treatment of blinding retinal diseases. And we are currently in preparations to launch the IND-enabling studies for this program. So stay tuned as we have very important milestones in the next 12 months.
So I think, thank you, Daphne, and it's great. We've been following it in focus your progress for quite some time, and sometimes regret the fact that we weren't able to deploy enough capital to support you early on, but we're still there, so don't worry. And I think that it's important for people to understand what you're doing, because I think over the years, if you asked most people when they talk about what's happening in Israel, it's almost always focused on technology and device. And the fact that there is a pharmaceutical development company that is actually clinical stage at the moment is something that may not be very well known to people. And there are others that are developing in Israel well. And I think the expansion of the ophthalmic healthcare development cycle in Israel needs to be presented as not just technology, not just device. There is a whole area of ophthalmic pharmaceutical development that's going on there as well. And I think people who attend this conference are going to actually see that. And I think it's great. And obviously we're happy to see that you continue to move forward. And I think, the fact that you're involved in this conference is also sort of important, because you're an ophthalmologist. And here you are sitting in this very compact space in Israel with massive amount of development going on, not just technology, as we've heard from Daphne also, but in pharmaceuticals. And you're involved with a lot of these companies. And the amount of opportunity is probably fairly overwhelming. So tell us a little bit about how you interact with, all of these startups and what you see as the unique culture in Israel regarding the development of all of this technology and pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rob. I am actually very excited to participate in this Congress. Over many years of experience in clinical world, academics, research, and industry, I feel that there is a huge development in ophthalmological innovations in Israel. When I started to be involved in the ophthalmic health tech, so to say, it was really in immature stages. It did develop in Israel to include extreme capabilities, as you say, both in devices and in pharma, plenty of innovations and development, and very important collaborations between hospitals, research, academics, and industry. I think this is something that Israel is really leading, this kind of collaboration. And I think that being an ophthalmologist in the midst of all these innovations that happen in our field is one of the most exciting experiences that one can have, because every one of these technologies that achieves maturity, it actually really helps our patients. And now, instead of just treating one eye, by adopting new technology, I can treat thousands of eyes and make them better. So I think it's a very exciting time in ophthalmology. We still have many diseases that were solved by the technologies, and still many others that are still lacking solution. And these the process to cure them continues to evolve almost daily. In the past, we wanted to stabilize vision. Now we are aiming for improving vision as well as reducing the burden, like what Daphne said goes along with this, reducing the burden on the physicians, on the system, and on the patients.
So, some people may have listened to my podcast with Yaakov in the past, and we talked about this, and we'll talk about this in a minute, Yaakov, but I want to stay with the knot for a minute. Do you think that the ability for academia, research, and industry to work so closely together because of the unique characteristics of the Israeli subculture make it so appealing for development? Do you think that the number of companies, and we'll talk about that with Yaakov in a minute, but do you think that the sheer number of companies that are able to develop a concept, develop a product or a pharmaceutical, get support from industry is somewhat facilitated by the unique culture in Israel? Do you think that there are reasons why that happens? Is it purely because everybody's in the same place and it's compact? Is there a certain attitude towards collaboration? What do you think it is that makes it so unique there? Because we don't see this, the interaction between industry and academia and finance in the United States, at least where I'm most comfortable, is a lot more complicated and strained, and it seems to flow much more smoothly in Israel. So what are your thoughts regarding why that occurs?
Yeah, Rob, I think it's a combination of everything you said. First of all, the proximity. Tel Aviv University is not far from the labs are not far from the hospital, as well as all the tech parks that are in Israel. So it's easy if I want to see some kind of a new ophthalmic company that Yaakov is interested to know about. It's easy for me to do it, and I think it's also the atmosphere and the friendship, and also I think all the hospitals have learned to understand that without collaboration with industry, they will remain limited. And I think that now all the hospitals do have a tech environment where everyone can both, I would say, park his ideas and get some help, and also get connections with industry and get help in that, and not just a no, you cannot do it because it belongs to the hospital or things like that. So I think it's all of these together. And I do feel, I don't know so much about the States in this regard and other countries, but I do feel that in Israel, it's really, really facilitated.
It's much more linear in the United States, where academia may have a product or an idea that may come out of laboratory research and whatnot, and then they will usually seek out financing, and then the financing will then, it's sort of a very linear approach, whereas in Israel, it seems to be much more circular, where everybody just sort of hops in around the same time. Is that correct, Daphne? Is that how you felt it went for you? Did you find that there was an ability to collaborate quickly amongst all the different parts that make up a startup company?
Well, I'm not sure that it's the circular. It's more circular than linear, as you mentioned, in a way that everything is more approachable. So, and I think that specifically for the ophthalmic group, we have a WhatsApp group of more than 50 or 60 CEOs developing technologies in ophthalmology. So every question I have, whether it is a legal, finance, investment, strategic, regulatory question, I can just send a question, and the collaborative spirit is so high that I will get an answer within seconds. So I think that everything is approachable, I would say.
Right. It's fascinating. So let me bring Yaakov in, because I think he can put a little sort of oversight onto this. But Yaakov, you're the CEO of a publicly traded venture capital fund that invests solely in ophthalmology and in ophthalmic startups. And it's interesting that, we've discussed your portfolio many times, and a lot of the companies that are making news and moving forward, including Tarsier, are part of your portfolio. How does all of this, or why do you feel that a publicly traded venture capital focused solely on ophthalmic startups is successful, specifically in Israel?
Thank you. I think that ophthalmology in Israel now is a specific area in which we see a lot of startups that combine what we call the high tech and the engineering with the healthcare. It starts from just a design of the new active compound through some AI complicated software, and it goes to the most sophisticated helmets with optical elements like Bionics or Notal and companies like this that are involved heavily in optics and other aspects. So this is something that we are really good at in Israel, taking the best engineers from the high-tech area in which we are very strong, combining it with excellent research coming from the academia and the hospital. And when you combine this together with the entrepreneurship spirit that is generally existing in Israel, and the unity between all the partners, I think you have a great result. And I think that this conversation is a very good example of it. We were lucky to invest in Daphne's company before she had a great result in the phase 2. We are working a lot with Anat, still interested to invest in her next startup. And we have 9 portfolio companies. Most of them are combining engineering and healthcare. And if we were not limited by the amount of funds that we have, now we would have a lot of additional opportunities in Israel. And I must jump to the context of this conversation. For those that will come and join us in the OIS Israel as part of the MIXiii, you will see about 27 presentations of amazing companies with great innovation and with some very interesting panels that will include all the KOLs in Israel, in the major 5 hospitals. And so I think it's very hard to arrange such an event if not for the unity between all the aspects of the industry in Israel working together for the success of all of us.
So can you just spend a couple minutes, Yaakov? You're the co-chairman of IATI, and I think it's an important oversight, an important position for you to have, especially as it relates to this. Can you explain a little bit about why you felt that MIXiii and IATI should include a specific ophthalmic session? Do you feel like it's the time now to expose the world to what's going on in Israel? And what was the rationale, at least at the higher level, for making OIS Israel a part of this?
So the IATI, as you said, is an umbrella organization for most of the high-tech and the biomed companies in Israel. So we have a good overview of what's happening in Israel. So we are a nation of less than 10 million people with about 1,600 companies in the area of healthcare. We have something between 60 to 100 companies solely in ophthalmology. And we have some spaces in Israel that have been known for years, like, for example, cardiology. There are conferences in Israel that are maybe the most famous in the world in the area of startups in this area. And we thought that this is time that people will understand that in Israel, we also have a great industry in the ophthalmic space with amazing innovation coming from Israel. Just in the last 2 or 3 months, we had a few deals of Israeli startups signing agreements with the top tier one of the 5 largest companies in the ophthalmic space in the world. So I think it's an example in these days when you have so many Israeli companies succeeding to overcome these days and even sign amazing agreements with strategic partners. It shows the strength of the industry. And we thought that doing the OIS Israel as part of a larger conference will bring even more crowd to the ophthalmic part. And so we want to engage also participants that were not yet exposed to the ophthalmic space, that as part of the larger conference, they will see how much innovation we have in this great space of ophthalmology in Israel.
That's fantastic. I mean, I've looked not just at the list of what's going to be happening in ophthalmology, but you see what's going on at that conference overall. It's fascinating. How many companies, how every field of medicine and healthcare represented. It's really an unbelievable conference. So for people who are interested in hearing about the whole healthcare sector in Israel, you're going to basically everything is there. I mean, the entire spectrum of health is covered at the conference. Daphne, you've been the co-chair of OIS Israel for a couple of years now, I think 3 years. So you've been involved in the structuring and in terms of developing an agenda for these meetings in the past. As the first live event, it's going to be a little bit different. And in addition to the 27 companies that are going to be presenting, what do you think of some of the other topics that we're going to be discussing, and why do you think those are relevant to the overall, ophthalmic sort of industry climate right now?
So first, Rob, for me, as you know, promoting technological developments in the ophthalmology field is a life mission. At many conferences and scientific lectures, I hear doctors present case studies of hopeless patients. But from my personal experience, I know that it's not the patient who are hopeless, but the doctors. It's you who lack the appropriate therapeutic and diagnostic tools. And I believe that this upcoming OIS will serve as a unique display of groundbreaking Israeli developments that will bring hope to ophthalmologists and patients. Now, since the first OIS conference I attended in the US, it was clear to me that we must import this platform to Israel. We are a cohesive community of CEOs in the field of ophthalmology. And this year, the strength of the conference, I believe, is in the variety of technologies that will be presented not only in between devices, pharma, diagnostics, and treatments, but also technological solutions for anterior and posterior diseases will be presented, and a mix of companies in various stages from very early R&D to companies that reach sales and marketing and hopefully some announcement on FDA approvals. So visitors can be exposed to the Israeli ophthalmic innovation scene, which I'm very proud to be part of.
That's great. I think it's going to be an amazing agenda. And not, why should people attend this meeting? Why is it so special?
Yeah, so in addition to what has been already said by Yaakov and Daphne, I think, so first of all, the combination of the companies presenting, physicians discussing, and researchers discussing, and all together, this really MIXiii thing is a great reason to come. And basically, going from anterior to the posterior part of the eye, as we are used to, the meeting is actually including most of the innovative projects in ophthalmology in our startup nation. So you will, if you come, you will hear about artificial cornea, novel treatment for glaucoma with laser and minimal surgery, contact lenses, synthetic corneal implants, printed artificial cornea, biomimetic tissue for corneal disease, and drops for correcting vision, diagnosis through tears, visual impairment solutions by eye tracking, and then when we go to the posterior part, many other things such as monitoring of visual functions, use of blinking for energy, treatment of retinopathy of prematurity with drops, and drops for presbyopia, and many other things, printing of retinal parts. So a lot of very exciting developments that are, these are Israeli companies, but they basically cover all the new innovations that exist nowadays.
So, you all know this, but the audience may not, that it's semi-embarrassing, but I've never been to Israel before. And it's not easy to get me to hop on a 12-hour flight, for a couple of days. And I don't think I've probably been the best traveler for the past couple of years, but November 9th and 10th, I will be in Israel. And I am very much looking forward to seeing you all there and to be a part of what I think is probably going to be one of the most exciting conferences highlighting ophthalmic startup technology in the recent past. And I hope that people who listen to this podcast feel the same compulsion that I had to be there, because it's going to be a sort of a pretty unique event. And I thank you all for dreaming it up, and for OIS for helping with the logistical establishment, and to Yaakov, Daphne, and Anat. Looking forward to seeing you November 9th and 10th in Israel at MIXiii and OIS Israel. Thank you all for taking the time this morning. And I'm looking forward to an amazing meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks for listening to the OIS Podcast. Tune in next week as we chat science, medicine, and industry with ophthalmology's leading experts. Visit OIS.net for more information on podcasts, events, and exciting new features.